me a little bit about your dad and his co-occurring disorder.
Okay, let's see. So, my dad, he has a co-occurring disorder where he is diagnosed to be bipolar, and he also has a drinking problem. With these two, they kind of go hand in hand. With his bipolar, when he gets into a low depression, he tends to drink a lot to, cope with being depressed. And when he drinks a lot, it makes him more depressed, and it's just a downward spiral unless he can get himself out of his loop that he's always in. So.
And how are your visits with your dad?
My visits with him, they're usually short and brief unless, I go out to put an effort to try and, stay at his house and, try and, make do with him. But yeah, it's not very clean, or his house is always dirty and full of alcohol, and it never was the best of environment, I should say.
And how does the co-occurring disorder affect your relationship with your father?
It was difficult when he's with his disorder. I had a hard time communicating with him because he doesn't really know what to say, and you don't know really what to say, so you don't really have a good conversation. And he never was really thinking about others, he was always thinking about himself. And just, seeing him in this form of, always being depressed took a toll on me, so I was always depressed, and when I would come home I would be depressed and sick, and it was just taxing on my body and my mind, and it just never was good.
And at what age did you recognize that what was going on?
I would say pretty young age, between ages of 8 and 10 is when I fully started realizing what was going on. Because it was just, like every so often I would go over to his house and stay over, and I would just see him in this, kind of depressive mode, and then I kind of asked my mother, what was going on, so that's when I fully understood what was happening, but it came slowly, so.
How do you think his co-occurring disorder affects his day-to-day life?
It did for a while there. He used to work, and he used to take care of his family. But recently he's let his disorder take control of his life, and he's kind of let his life, just fall apart in front of him. And he doesn't have a job, and he lives in a small house that the government pays for, and he basically just lives off the government, and he doesn't sustain his own life and his own family. So.
Tell us a little bit about your half-brother and your half-sister.
My half-brother and my half-sister, they were born by him, and they've been highly affected by him, more than I have. My half-brother, he was always skinny and antisocial, and always sad and depressed, which did take a toll on him and his health. He was always sick, and he didn't look healthy. My little half-sister, she was kind of on the opposite side. She was a little bit too social, which I guess she didn't really have boundaries, so she would always be in your face and ask you questions. And she would just be like always in your presence. So I guess you can say that they both have the two different spectrums of what like a fatherly depressive outlook or I can't think of the word, but just the effects that co-disorder has on children. So
how would you say their relationship is with their dad?
I'd say it's pretty strong, or like my half sister and
Your half brother and your half sister.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty strong just because they trust him, because like he gets the food and like he gives them a house, but I wouldn't say it's entirely pure, because they're not all okay in their minds. So it's not like a normal family where they can get together and have conversations. It's just like he brings the food, they eat it, they don't talk much, they don't do anything much, they just are there, and they kind of just they don't interact with each other, but
All right, I am going to talk to you a little bit about co-occurring disorders and my experience with them. My ex-husband has a co-occurring disorder. First of all, he was diagnosed with bipolar in high school. And so in his case, the mental illness came first. And then his addiction to drugs and alcohol came when he was in college. We met while we were in college. When we married, he quit his drinking and smoking. And when our son was about a year old, my ex-husband attempted suicide. He did this by trying to overdose on his prescription medications that he had to take for his bipolar. And so after he attempted suicide, I'd have to hide his prescription pills in the house and give him his dose that he needed every day. He hated the fact that he had to take pills to make him feel normal. And so he would use substances to self-medicate. We were together for a total of 5 years. And prescription pain pills ended up being the beginning of his relapse. This addiction led him back to an alcohol addiction, and he soon got into with marijuana, and then he found crystal meth. At this point, we ended up separating, and soon we divorced because I was unwilling to raise my son in this kind of environment with these drugs. So since our divorce, he's been remarried, and he has 2 kids. And his co-occurring disorder has definitely influenced his entire life. He does not work. He stays in bed most days. And I'm not quite sure if this is because of his alcohol dependency or if it's because of the bipolar, because a lot of times bipolar, they have manic episodes and then they also have depressive episodes, so I'm not quite sure what causes him to be in bed most days. His alcohol addiction has definitely affected his family life and his home life. There is an increase of domestic violence in their home. He has been arrested a couple times. And this last time, it was about 9 months ago when he was arrested, and he ended up being in jail for a couple months this time. And now he is finally receiving treatment for his co-occurring disorder. And he is doing much better as far as I've been told. The first time that my son saw his father sober since our divorce was after he had been in jail for a couple months and had sobered up, and he was on his way to a treatment center, and my son saw him for the first time, and that was at the age of 17. So this was only about 6 months ago. So I hope that he is on his way to recovery and getting that treatment that he needs for both his alcohol addiction as well as his bipolar disorder.